Om Sahana Bhavatu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sthulo mam samayo dehaha. Together. Sthulo mam samayo dehaha. Nirmasyad vasanamayaha. Jnana karmendriyai sardham. Dhi pranau tacchariragau. Ajnanam karanam karta. Bodhastesham vibhasakaha. Bodhabhaso buddhikataha. Karta syat punyapapayoh. Saeva samsaret karma. Vashalokadvaye sada. Bodhabhasat chuddha bodham. Vivicyadati yatnataha. Jagarasvapnayoreva. Bodhabhasa vidambana. Suptau tu tallaye bodhaha. Shuddho jadyam prakashayet. Jagarepi dhiyastushnim. Bhavashuddhena bhasyate. Dhivyaparascha chidbhasyaha. Chidabhasena samyuta. This intimate discussion about what is happening within one's own antahkarana as a doorway to look at Dvaita and then understand oneself as Advaita is a methodology that is very unique, very nicely deployed. And generally speaking, this comes under the rubric of what is called Tvam Pada Vichara, an inquiry into the word you. What is this you? And when we look at Vedanta texts, they always expound the Mahavakya. They talk about the oneness of the sad, bad, mad, rad, Jiva, and Ishvara, the cause of the universe. And in so doing, it is presented like an equation that needs to be resolved in order to make sense. An equation is not supposed to make sense at the outset. 2 plus 2 is equal to 2 plus 2 is not an equation. That also, it doesn't need to be expressed like an equation at all. Why? Because its meaning is obvious. It would be a redundant statement. There is nothing to discover. There is nothing to solve or resolve. So an equation that is expressed between the jiva, the complaining jiva. If you just say jiva, it doesn't, hit home. Yeah, you have to say complaining jiva, malingering jiva, hypochondriac jiva. Yeah, then, okay. Because somewhere, there is a resonance. Otherwise, jiva becomes some kind of a conceptual word. So the equation between this complaining jiva and the extremely contented Ishvara, non-complaining Ishvara, that is the equation here. Because an equation, at the face of it, even if you take a local equation like E is equal to mc squared, energy and matter are very different. They have nothing in common. How can they be the same? There is something to look into. And so too here, even if you take a mathematical equation, 2 plus 2 is equal to 2 plus 2, that's not an equation. Anything to speak of. But if you say to a third grader, 5 plus 4 is equal to 100 minus 91. That is a head-scratching equation. Because on the face of it, there is so much dissimilarity. There is no, on the one hand, single digits and a plus sign. And on the other side, on the other hand, we have double digits and a minus sign. How can the two be the same? They cannot. And if the 8-year-old who is being given this equation were to say, "Oh teacher, I have a lot of shraddha in you. I believe you." Will the equation show itself? Show some signs of life. Yeah. Will the equation show itself? No, of course it will not. Because this is not a matter of belief. This is a matter to be understood. It's something to understand as the truth of oneself. And so on the 5 plus 4 side, we have to do the math there. So you have to count with the fingers or with an abacus, however you count, and then you arrive at the answer, 9. And there also on the other side, you have to do the operations. Certain operations are given which have to be done. And the operations here on this side is the addition, on the other side is subtraction. And then the 3-year-old understands. The 8-year-old, the third grader, understands. The 8-year-old need not say, "I believe you." The 8-year-old understands for herself or himself. So too in the equation, Tat Tvam Asi. This is a very famous equation. Tat is equal to Tvam. What is Tvam? The complaining one is called Tvam. The one full of complaints is called Tvam. And then what is this Tat? What is the meaning of Tat? No, the grammatical word Tat, what does it mean? That. That Ishvara over there, somewhere, locally not available. Not for lack of looking, the jiva will say, "I have looked here, I have looked there, I have looked everywhere." No Ishvara. Actually, one teenager asked me, because this is an American teenager. You say Ishvara attended some talk that I gave at some conference. Had heard the word Ishvara for the first time. So he said, is this Shvara virtually available? Because he thought it is Shvara. Like email, e-book, Ishvara. Not even virtually, where? Where are you going to look? He thought it's somewhere in the net. Where should I go to download Shvara? He said, because he thought E was part of this, virtual reality. So, Jiva is equal to Ishvara, Tvam is equal to Tat. Tat means that. And the Upanishad also uses the word that primarily because it goes along with where the human mind is and where the human being is. That is where, because from the standpoint of the human mind, this Ishvara is MIA. What is MIA? Missing in action. AWOL, absent without leave. Gone. God knows where. Ishvara knows where. Don't know where. And the question where itself is fraught, as we'll see, with many problems. But for now, from the standpoint of the one not exposed to the Shastra, Brahman, Ishvara is all predicated by the word that. It is a nod to the remoteness of one's own understanding or lack thereof. Things that are close by, I do not use the preposition that. I don't say that book, that glasses, that microphone. It's all this, this, this. Whereas that door, that clock, that Ishvara, Tat. Tat therefore becomes a sign, becomes a short form for Jagat Karanam Brahma. The cause, Brahman as the cause of the universe, Ishvara. So Tat is equal to Tvam, or Tvam is equal to Tat. Tvam is equal to Tat. Then certain things have to be done. We have to look into what is this Tvam and what is this Tat. The content of this Tvam has to be examined. And in every Vedanta text, this is done through an operation which is termed as Tvam Pada Vichara. We find this in the Upanishads. Like when the Mandukya Upanishad discusses the individual as the waking person, the one who wakes up, the one who awakens, the one who enjoys sleep, and the one who dreams, the one who goes through these three states which are universal experience. This is what is the Tvam Pada Vichara. And then again, one more thing. This is a small Vedanta trivia to impress your friends. And certain texts are what are called Tvam Pada Pradhana. Means they do talk about Ishvara and that oneness, but it is mainly, the main focus is on the I and delineating the I from all the things with which it appears to be enmeshed, such as what? Body. What else? Mind, senses, possessions, beliefs, ideologies, various identities. Kartritvam, bhoktritvam, doership, experiencership, etc., etc. So delineating that cognitively, it seems to be the main point of some of the texts. And those texts are considered Tvam Pada Pradhana. Like the text we were talking about in the morning, Dridrishya Viveka. Tvam Pada Pradhana. Then certain other texts are Ishvara-centric, Brahman-centric. They do talk about you, but then they are more into unfolding the nature of Ishvara, manifest as the Jagat, as the laws, etc., etc. And such texts are called Tat Pada Pradhana. And then if we look at Laghu-Vakya-Vrtti, up till now it appears to be Tvam Pada Pradhana. But if we look at it with all the 18 verses, if we have a look at it in its entirety, we find that it is neither Tat Pada Pradhana nor tvam pada pradhana. Oh no. What is it then? Asi pada pradhana. Because in tattvam asi there is asi. What is asi? You are is asi. You are. So the beingness of Brahman is what is being discussed. But then the entry is through the doorway marked tvam. Understood? So this is like a GPS for the Laghu-Vakya-Vrtti. So that you can see where we are, what we have covered in these 5 verses, what we are covering. So the doorway marked you. And what is this you? And just to do a little simhavalokanam, a look back. What is this you? The you that is endowed with a body of flesh, blood, bones, etc., called the physical body. The you that also has a subtle body, which, what does it do? What is the subtle body famous for? Traveling. It travels. And then the cause of these 2 bodies is the you, that is the ignorance. The ignorance is the causal body, and identified with the ignorance, the jiva is born and gets a new epithet, karta, and by extension, bhokta, pramata, manta, dharta, bharta, samharta, all these things. So many words in Sanskrit which are agent nouns. Like in English we have seer, hearer, thinker, goer, doer, experiencer, etc. And so there is this infinite loop of action, results of action, and then the receipt of the results of action. And why should the receipt of the results of action matter? The receipt of the results of action matters primarily because one does not like what one gets. So one needs a makeover of the results of action. There is only one way to make over the results of action, by engaging in more action and more action and more action. This is what is talked about, the content of the word you. Not a very happy story. Dipped in ignorance, like what is that one, strawberry inside the chocolate, okay? Yeah. Nicely coated in ignorance, this jiva. Not as tasty. But nonetheless, this is what the I is. So somehow there needs to be some delineation. Certain things have to be taken away out of this picture that do not belong. That do not belong, A. B. That keep changing. That keep fluctuating. Why? Because that is contrary to the nature of Brahman, with which the you, the tvam, meaning the I, is being equated. So certain things have to go. What has to go? Ignorance, of course, has to go. But here in this physical body, etc., so all the things that keep changing have to go cognitively, conceptually, not literally, figuratively. We take it out of the equation. We don't consider it part and parcel of the equation. So certain things have to go. Everything that is changing has to go. Is the physical body changing? Yes. By the time you said yes, it has already changed. It has grown older by a few milliseconds. So yes, the physical body is taken out of the equation. And what about the subtle body? Is that changing? Yes? And so that is also that also is suspended here in our discussions, conceptually, cognitively. That is what we have done in the first 5 verses. That's what we are doing right now. The physical body is suspended, is not taken into account in this cognitive journey of crafting this equation, understanding and assimilating this equation between Jiva and Ishvara. Physical body is subject to change, so not being taken into account. The subtle body also undergoes so many changes because it is seen as the traveler. Sa eva sancharet. It keeps traveling. And why does it keep traveling? Because it is under the spell or the enslavement of karmic results of action, dharmic and otherwise. And so, therefore, that is also set aside. Then what else is set aside? The causal body is also set aside for the time being, because that also changes, because it drops in the wake of knowledge, so it is not permanent. Everything that is not permanent is put aside. Then what is left? That also, ahankara is part of the subtle body. Yeah, subtle body. Let's not forget. Yeah, so what is left there? So, the one who is counting all these things is left. Yeah. The one who is counting and putting aside is the one that is left. This conscious being, this consciousness is left. The consciousness, and this consciousness is ingeniously looked upon from a very nice, from a very wonderful standpoint. From the standpoint of sheer existence, that which is sentient existence, which is all-knowing, it is completely self-aware and everything becomes aware to it. It does not need to be made aware through another consciousness or through another source of light. It is self-lit, self-evident, swatas-siddha. Okay? Then what else is there? And then, so this consciousness, which is forever, unchanging, limitless, is what is left when we take away the everything that is dispensable. But then, the taking everything away, except for the purposes of analysis, is not possible. Otherwise, how will you go about your day? Even to come and sit in the class, some ego is required, something is required to study, to decide to come to the Gurukulam. And so ingeniously, this consciousness is seen as though associated with everything changing, everything subject to birth, subject to death. In other words, this consciousness blesses everything that is finite with its presence and with its sentience. So the body is inert, blessed by consciousness, it is sentient. The mind is inert, blessed by consciousness, and blessed by consciousness, what is the word here? Bodha bhasa. That is where we get this theory of as though reflected consciousness. So same consciousness, as it were, blesses the body, blesses the mind, blesses the senses, blesses all the complaints so that you can happily keep on complaining. No problem, it is blessed by consciousness. Blesses even the ignorance. It's not opposed to ignorance because it is all knowledge. It's not opposed to any kind of dyad. It even brings ignorance to light. We saw that. Shuddham jadyena bhasyate. So therefore, this consciousness, as though associates, and if you look at the Taittiriya Upanishad, as though enters the body-mind sense complex, this is what is it called? Pravesha Shruti. Pravesha Shruti. The Shruti that talks about the entry, so to speak, of this consciousness, which blesses all things, which without that blessing presence are all inert. So that which fills everything up is that Purusha. Purayati Sarvan, that is the Vyutpatti of Purusha. Oh, I thought Purusha means human being. That also is true. And that has a slightly different Vyutpatti. Puri Shete, the one that is sleeping in the citadel of the body-mind sense complex, sleeping the sleep of ignorance. So if you say Purushaf Purushaha, if you say the word Purusha twice, then what do you get? A Mahavakya. Purushaf Purushaha. Pujya Swamiji talked about this for 1 week in Pune, long back. Everybody was intrigued. What is this Purushaf Purushaha? Why repeat Purusha twice? Purusha plus Purusha, what do you get? The plus here is minus. You get one. One Purusha, the complaining one gets knocked off. That is the idea. Brilliant talks they were. Wonderful. So this is what it is. So it blesses everything finite, in whose presence everything comes to light, and this so-called entry is very much, mimicked in the kinds of sweets we make also. Yesterday there was a question about festivals and all this. So what is it that Lord Ganesha holds in the hand? Modaka. Modaka means that which causes joy. Yeah, Moda is joy, that which causes Ananda. And it's got this kind of a shape, some kind of a dough that is rolled out, and then it has a filling. And then you make like a dumpling, and then you fry it if you're young, or you steam it if you're health conscious, and then you have this. And you have this modaka. That filling is called Purna. Interesting. This is a Vedantic dessert. Purnam. What Purnam? The same thing. Purnam Adaha. The cause is Purna, and that which is the so-called effect in the form of this body-mind-sense complex, that is also Purna. It's all Purna. That's why it is delicious, because it is filling, it is Purna. Even in English we say filling. It is full. It is not just full, it is fullness itself. And then what is this casing? That is the body-mind-sense complex. As children we would remove it. We wanted to only have the Purna. And so this is how we look at this. And the theory of as though reflected consciousness, aka Pratibimbavada, helps to see this. Helps to see that this Chit, which we are talking about, this consciousness, this all-pervasive, full, infinite, all-knowledge consciousness, is nothing other than that which blesses the mind, blesses the organs of action to do their activities, blesses speech, blesses the sense organs to light up all the Vishayas. Vishayas means objects. So, from the standpoint of the Chit as it is, as though associated with and blessing the body, mind, sense complex, it acquires the name Abhasa. But it is still Chit. Just from the standpoint of the body, mind, sense complex, we say Abhasa. Same Chit. And then, so we take away a few things. Take away everything that is subject to finitude. We take away all the things that are not part of this equation, and what is left here is just Chit, consciousness. Certain things are retained, Chit is retained, consciousness doesn't go, it is retained, everything else is swept away. This is what is famously called Jahad Jaha Lakshana. Lakshana, indicator. Because why do we need an indicated meaning? Because the direct meaning doesn't work. You are Ishvara. Doesn't work at all. Even in the dream it doesn't work. And so therefore, we have to look for an indicated meaning. Since the direct meaning, you are Ishvara, Tattvamasi doesn't work, we look for the indirect or the indicated meaning, the indicatory meaning, and that is called Lakshana Vakya. All Mahavakyas are Lakshana Vakyas. And Lakshana operates in a very interesting way. Lakshana is not just for Mahavakya, for so many other, even everyday things, we can say Lakshana. We can use Lakshana. Shveto Dhavati. What did I say? White runs. White is what? A color, correct? White can run? No. Yeah. Shveto Dhavati. So it doesn't make any sense. The direct meaning doesn't yield any sense. White runs. Actually, if you said red runs, you can say, okay, by way of color, it is running in the wash. But here, even that's not possible because the white color doesn't run. So obviously, we need to add something, correct? Like Ashvaha, horse. White runs. So why the word horse is omitted? Because perhaps, horse racing is illegal somewhere. And somebody wants to give a tip. Shveto Dhavati, yes, the white one is running, bet on that one. Okay. This is a code language of Lakshana. White runs. This is Ajaha Lakshana. You bring in something in order to make sense. Sometimes you have to take away something. Like in this, the body, mind, sense, complex, etc. are taken away. Sometimes you have to take something away for the sentence to make sense. But then in the Mahavakya uses a Lakshana, not Jahal Lakshana. Jahat means giving up. You don't give up anything here only, or you don't retain anything only. It is a combination of the two. You give up everything that is not self-standing, that is finite, that is subject to destruction, that is subject to birth, that is subject to death. You give it all up. And what remains, you retain. And what remains invariably is you. The one who is taking everything away is the one who remains. That consciousness alone remains. You as consciousness remains. This is what is called the Tvampada operation. Then we walk over. Now that we have determined What is this Tvam? I hope we have determined. What is this Tvam? Yeah, what is you? Abba, okay, yeah. One of the qualifications of the Vedanta teacher is that he or she should be easily pleased. So, yeah, consciousness, nothing else. Don't point to the body, don't point to the head, don't point anywhere. That's the point. Because there is no where here. There is no location. It's all pervasive consciousness, which is as though blessing this body, as though blessing this mind, as though associated with the intellect, with the ahankara, everything. So have we resolved this side here? Yes? No? Okay. Then we walk over to the tat side. And there again we do the same exact thing. Jahat jahal lakshana. Jahat plus ajahat jahat jahal lakshana. Same thing you do. You see what is behind the word Ishvara. What is this Ishvara? The word comes from Ishu. Ish dhatu palane. The one who is the overlord. When? And that is given by the suffix. The time length is given, the tenure of Ishvara is given by the suffix varach. Santata bhave varach. There is a sutra. Varach means, always. The cha goes away by a Paninian rule. So we have vara. Many words are like this. So Ish to overlord plus Vara, Ishvara, the one who is always the overlord. Nash, to destroy, Nashvara, the one that is always subject to destruction. For example, the body. Bha, to shine, Bhasvara. What is that? Sun. Took a little while for the sun to rise here. So, Bhasvara. Stha, to stay, plus Vara. What is that? What is that? Plants, trees, mountains, yeah. Things that stay. Sthavara, things that stay not for 5 minutes, like a good dog. That also stays, but only for 5 minutes. But always. There is an alwaysness associated with the word Ishvara. And what is this Ishvara? Cause of the universe, from which everything has come, by which everything is sustained, unto which everything resolves. Along with the Shakti to create, to sustain, and to take everything back. This is what is Ishvara. But we cannot look somewhere and say, where are you, Ishvara? Please send me your location. I would like to visit. This doesn't work. Why? Because it is this Ishvara all-pervasive. We don't say Ishvara is separate from the Jagat. Ishvara made the Jagat and left it like that without a babysitter and retreated to some place, heaven, etc. We don't have that theology at all. That is not the understanding. So kamayat bahusyam praja yegeti satapo tapyat satapas taptva idagum sarvam asrijat yadidham kincha tatsrishtva tadevanupravishat tadanupravishya satchatyaccha bhavat. This is from the second Valli chapter of the Taittiriya Upanishad. Brahmananda Valli. Saha akamayat. This being, this Ishvara, along with Maya Shakti, because Ishvara don't think man, don't think male. Ishvara includes Ishvari. That's why when you go to the temple in the morning, you can look closely and you will see the left side of Lord Dakshinamurti is feminine. How do you tell? There is a different earrings. The right side has a different earring and the left side has a different feminine earring. Ishvara includes, is masculine, feminine, because essentially without gender. So therefore can be invoked with any gender, anyhow. So this being contemplated, desired. Ishvara also has desires? No. They are all the jivas' desires. So for the sake of the jivas, and where are the jivas? They are in a unmanifest form. The jivas in an unmanifest form, jivas are unmanifest, but the desires are clamoring for manifestation. So an appropriate kshetra has to be prepared for these jivas to get there, to exhaust their karmas and to have a place to play with their desires. A playpen for the jivas have to be constructed. This playpen is called Jagat. So therefore that desire, Ishvara had this desire. And what was the desire? Bahusyam prajayeya, may I become many. Become, within quotes. So to that end, what did Ishvara do? Satapo tapyata. Ishvara did not sit and do tapas. Jnanameva tapaha. This tapas is just nothing but knowledge. Knowledge of everything in general and everything in particular. Why should some animals breathe through their sides of the body? Why should some of them breathe through the nose? Why should some of them not breathe at all and still be alive without respiration? This is knowledge. So contemplated upon the knowledge and contemplated upon the universe in the previous cycle of creation. And so Ishvara thought that last cycle, shabash, not bad at all, it worked. I think we can just repeat it, tweaking a few things. Universe 2.0, no problem. Or 3.0, we don't know in which iteration we are. This is saha tapo tapyata. Satapas taptva, having done this, having thought about this, having looked at this, her limitless knowledge. Idam sarvam asrijata, created everything. Again, created means there is dvaita between the creator created. That's why it continues. Tat srishtva, having created, tadeva anupravishat. Like the Purna in the Modak, what did Ishvara do? Filled up every name, every form. Is the content of every name, every form, even now. That same Ishvara said, oh, okay, I'm going to make myself various forms and I'm going to enter into them as effortlessly as water, finding little nooks and crannies and, small little holes and everything to just go into. Have you seen a tide pool? You see in the rocks there are little depressions, and the tide comes in and the water effortlessly just goes and fills up all things that need to be filled up. Similarly, Ishvara, like the ocean water, limitless, without losing itself, without undergoing any change, without altering itself in any way, this Ishvara bless this entire universe with her presence. This is the unique part of the Vedanta Shastra. Very, very, very beautiful, extremely unique. So anything that you see is Ishvara. That is what it is. Whatever you see, whatever you encounter is Bhagavan, Ishvara. What you like, Bhagavan. What you don't like, double Bhagavan. Yeah. And everything in between, Bhagavan. In-laws, Bhagavan. Outlaws, Bhagavan. In-laws who behave like outlaws, Bhagavan. This is something mind-boggling. Everything is Bhagavan. Nothing is without the presence of Bhagavan. And that's why we say Namaste. And in this Namaste, the entire Mahavakya is encapsulated, nothing more to be said. This hand, funny looking hand, none of the fingers are of equal length. This hand also is nothing to do with this hand. The dominant hand is slightly bigger than the non-dominant one. Even the fingerprints do not match. Yet when they come together, Namaha, salutations, surrender. It's not that the differences are swept aside. No, we are not afraid of differences. Here I can use the word, they are transcended. I look beyond the differences when I say Namaste. And the beauty of it is that the same Namaste I say to Bhagavan. Om Namaste Astu Bhagavan. And that same Namaste I say to you. Same Namaste. This is everywhere. Everything is Ishvara. And for everything to be Ishvara, Ishvara has to be free of being any one thing. Blesses with the presence, blesses with the sentience, everything that is there in this creation. Tad anupravishya, having entered this entire creation of names and forms, places, directions, elements, etc. Sat cha tyat cha abhavat. Here Sat doesn't mean that Satchidananda Sat. Here Sat means with form and without form. Without form like what? Space. Space is Ishvara. Time is Ishvara. That is Tyat. Sat means things that have form. Also Ishvara. Everything is Ishvara. And even this body therefore is Ishvara. That is why one adorns this body. Not for the sake of the body, but for the sake of the indweller, the one who is dwelling within. Mind is Ishvara. And looking at the mind as Ishvara is a great blessing, because every emotion is Ishvara. Sadness, Ishvara; anger, Ishvara; jealousy, Ishvara; fear, Ishvara; desire, Ishvara; boredom, Ishvara. So all Ishvara, Ishvara. How is it Ishvara? Because it's part of the psychological order. Given this background, this is the kind of emotion that will come. Very, very interesting. And so it doesn't become your sadness. When one thinks of it as my sadness, whenever the word my and me come, there is problems. So if I think of it as my sadness, then there is a loneliness associated with it. There's a feeling of being targeted. And there is pain as a result. Instead, what do I do? How do I look at it? This sadness is there. It's got a reason. And that reason is also Ishvara, in the form of another law, karma, a karmic law. And so when you examine the sadness and you look at it objectively, considering the situation, this sadness is valid. And so therefore what? It doesn't become your sadness. It's just something that is there as a psychological order, the physiological order. Wherever there are eyes, they will see. So you can look at the eyes of a goat darting back and forth. You can look at the eyes of a cow or a dog, docile, full of love. You can look at the eyes of a big cat waiting to pounce, focused. They all see. Or you can look at the eyes of the unseeing, so to speak, glazed eyes of an alligator. It's lying like this. Half the blessed animal is teeth. Okay? And then it's lying like this in the sun. It looks like it's not looking at all. When some small hapless thing happened to pass by, it was looking. Ishvara. It happened to escape. Ishvara. Yeah, if one is vegetarian, one wants it to escape. Ishvara. Whole thing. Even the mind, Ishvara. Senses, Ishvara. Ahankara, Ishvara. But Ishvara is not just the body. Body is Ishvara, Ishvara is not the body. Mind is Ishvara, Ishvara is not the mind. Senses are Ishvara, Ishvara is not any one of the senses. That we have to remember. And so here, this Ishvara, that is the cause of the entire universe, non-separate from the creation. In fact, we don't call it a creation. Manifestation. Vyakta, manifest, and avyakta, unmanifest, yet to be manifest. So this whole manifestation, including this body-mind-sense complex, non-separate from the manifester. A manifestation that is non-separate from the manifester. What kind of a manifestation is that? It is an as-though projection of oneself. Ishvara's projection is this whole universe. Ishvara's projection. And then alongside, and why do we need this Mahavakya and why are we doing this operation? The problem is not with Ishvara's projection. It is benign. But alongside we have to deal with Jiva's projection. Ishvara Srishti, no problem. Jiva Srishti, very, very toxic. That is what has to be, cleaned up. Which is why the Mahavakya is absolutely necessary. So here, coming on the Ishvara side, now that we have had a little bit of a discussion of what this Ishvara is, what will you retain and what will you take away when we do this operation called Jahat and Ajahat Lakshana? What will you keep? Things that go away you have to let go of. So, Ishvara is associated with the creation. Does the creation go away? No? Come and see me after class, whoever said no. So, does the creation go away? Yes, in between cycles, the creation goes into a state of unmanifestation. So, creation you take away, and then what's left? Don't go there yet. Creator, you can say. So the creator is left, but is a creator without creation? No. Just like, is the Sakshi a Sakshi when there is nothing to witness? No, same thing. So here also, this Ishvara-ness or Ishvara-hood, Ishvaratvam comes and goes whenever there is something to overlord. You see, we have, even though that pratyaya, varach means always, that always is a relative always. It's not an absolute always. Very nice. Grammatically always, yes. On the level of the, on the level of the everyday order of reality, yes, always. But here, the one who is the overlord always, that always is a finite always, connected to the creation. And if the creation is dispensed with cognitively, because it rises, it ebbs, it comes and it goes, and whatever comes and goes, we have nothing to do with that in this operation. And so then, if we dispense with the concept of this creation, then we also have to interrogate the concept of creator. We have to inquire into that. So this creator-ness, Ishvaratvam, Ishvara-hood, that also goes. Ishvara doesn't go. Ishvara is consciousness. That consciousness is Ishvara. Ishvara doesn't go. Jiva doesn't go. Jiva-ness goes. Ness includes all the complaints and everything. And then Ishvara-ness goes. And then what is there? Consciousness. This is what is, you retain that sentient consciousness plus Maya Shakti, that plus Maya Shakti, whatever is that add-on, plus Maya Shakti, plus the power to project, the power to sustain, the power to take back, all that is set aside cognitively. Ishvaratvam dispensed with, and what is there? Ishvara alone. Jivatvam on this side, Jiva-hood, the misidentification with the various bodies, etc., that is Jiva-hood, Jiva-ness. That is set aside, we set that aside, and all that is there is consciousness. Therefore, we can say, by an indicatory methodology, pedagogy, that Jiva is Ishvara, that the word Aham is indeed Brahma. Very wonderful. And so, this text, that is where it is going. But it is going in its own way. In fact, the word Brahman is used only once in the whole text. And Aham Brahmasmi is not repeated at all, even though it's expounding that. So it's doing it in a very, very unique way, which is really worth looking into. So, just to sum up here, verse number 5. In verse number 4 and 5. In verse number 4, we saw that the consciousness, what does consciousness do here? There is the Chidabhasa, consciousness which is as though associated with the body-mind-sense complex. What does it do? It is active in the waking state. And where else? Dream state. Whereas in the sleep state, it is consciousness alone, not associated with the mind, with the intellect, etc. And that consciousness, what does it light up in sleep? Nothing in particular. It lights up nothing in particular. it lights up the fact that the sleeping one is not knowing anything, the sleeping one is ignorant of everything. This is verse number 4. Verse number 5, and in case one started to have a heavy heart, oh, I'll have moksha only in sleep. I will not have it in the waking state. And in case one starts to justify the naps that one takes in class, then the verse number 5, serves to disabuse one of such notions by saying, Jagare api, even in the waking state. What is there? Even in the waking state, there is the chit alone can be understood. When we shut up, basically, tushnim bhava, when there is silence, like the silence between thought number 1 and thought number 2, or in the meditation, Om Namah Shivaya number 1 and Om Namah Shivaya number 2, what is there? That is silence. That silence is illumined by that sentience. Unconditioned sentience alone lights up that silence, like the sunlight lights up the wall. And then, dhi vyaparaha cha chidbhasyaha chidabhasena samyuta. Whereas the vyapara means transactions of the intellect, all the doubts, all the fears, all the despair, all the arguments that goes on in the head. I should have, I shouldn't have, I don't know, I don't know if I did the right thing, maybe I should have done something differently, all this second guessing, etc., is definitely lit by that consciousness which is as though conditioned by the intellect. But the consciousness that is conditioned by the intellect has no standing without being blessed by the consciousness. And so both of them together light it up like a sunlit wall over which a little glass orb or a mirror is being moved back and forth. Here, both of them, so to speak, are in operation. Meaning what? Why is this important? Because it is important because this shows that which blesses the intellect is consciousness alone, and consciousness that is as though associated with the intellect becomes equipped to have a parallel reality of its own, which is called jivatvam, which is the cause of sorrow. Having said this, now the text switches to, from the Pratibimbavada, from this theory, from examining this theory of reflected, as though reflected consciousness, to Avachedavada, the theory of as though conditioned consciousness. And that is what we will see in the next class. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaga Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.